Eh.
Get that money, go ahead, get that money. Young, get that money. Young Lee, get that money.
What's up, Get Money team? Welcome back to another video. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. Join the Get Money team. The link to the Discord is in the bio. Today we getting into utilizing fair value gaps. So fair value gaps part 2. So in our last video, we really started piecing together the break and retest strategy that I use, just to add on to what we learned the last video about, like, you know, just taking trades off of those key levels and stuff like that. The next entry I want to show y'all is using the same break and retest concept, but with a fair value gap instead of just using those highs and those lows that we used the last time. So when we're using a fair value gap, instead of waiting for a break before the retest, the fair value gap kind of acts like the break itself, if that makes sense. So since we know the gap is between two candles that don't touch, right here, as y'all can see, we have our fair value gap. We got 1, 2, 3 candle pattern that the last candle and the first candle don't touch at all. So we got space in here, right? The reason why I say the fair value gap acts like a break is when we see a fair value gap, we wait for price to come back into the fair value gap, at least 50% into the fair value gap. That's why this dotted line is here. So what we need to see in this situation is a close inside of our fair value gap, right? Aside of this area, touching the midline would be perfect. That little dotted line we have in there, touching that line would be the perfect idea, but we at least wanted to close inside of our fair value gap and then close back outside of it before getting into a trade, right? So what we want to see is this: price comes down. Hold on, we want to see price come down, touch this, and close back out of it before we get into a trade. And the trade that we getting into is to the upside. So without even finding a different example, this is literally today. This is today's trade that I took, right? Today was a losing trade, but I was definitely expecting price to come down into this 4-hour fair value gap today. So instead of taking a trade out of their fair value gap, being that we was on the move down, like I took the trade going into the fair value gap. Like I said, in today's situation, the perfect trade would be, we see how price came up through here, right? We played around a little bit, and then we got this drop. I was expecting this drop to come down into here before coming back out, right? Now the second part of this video is the second entry we find off of fair value gaps, and that is called the inverse fair value gap. The same 3 candle pattern, 1, 2, 3, and we got space in here, so nothing's touching. What we look for on the inverse fair value gap, we break out of our fair value gap. Instead of coming down and bouncing at our midline, we blow through this and we close all the way through. Once we close all the way through, like below the box that we made for our fair value gap, now in order for it to be an inverse fair value gap, we're gonna come and retest this line right here before continuing down. Cool. So it was kind of hard to find a perfect example of this, and this is still not like perfect, but this is kind of the gist of how that goes. Right here we have a bearish fair value gap, right, with these 3 candles right here, right? We got 1, 2, 3 with all this space in between. How we would expect a fair value gap to go to continue in the direction, you know, we have our downward movement with our fair value gap, then we come back up and hit the midline of it and continue down. But instead of that, when we're looking for our inverse fair value gap, we don't hit this in reverse. We go through it and close outside of our fair value gap and come back in and hit it from the opposite direction, and it takes off the other way. So like I said, y'all, we got gravity falls on. So like I said, y'all, we're just piecing this strategy together. Those are really the only entries that you get in from using fair value gaps. You know, you have the regular fair value gap, we will break through, test, and then keep going, or you got the inverse where we break through again, test, then go the opposite direction. I don't really use those setups too much because I find them like they're kind of too hard to find, so I don't really look for that too much. As you can see in today's trade though, I was going to use that, so it's not it's definitely there and it definitely works as an entry. I just don't use it a lot. But I think that's all I got on fair value gaps. I don't really use them that much, so I'm not gonna cover it no more. But I do appreciate y'all for watching. If you aren't in Discord already, join below, and there you can message me directly with questions and stuff like that. Make sure y'all subscribe to the channel, leave a like, also send this video to somebody you think can use this information. Appreciate y'all again for watching. Let's get money.